with Maryann Okon on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
It's still Hard Facts, 99.3 Nigeria Info. Welcome back from that break. We still have Abba Aliyu in the studio. He's the managing director for the Rural Electrification Agency, and we're talking about powering up all our rural communities, ministries, departments, agencies now with renewable energy. In case you're just joining us, apologies, we're not live on YouTube and on Facebook, but you could join the conversation on WhatsApp. It's 080-959-75805. That's 080-959-75805. You could join the conversation also if you're listening to us on our mobile application. Yes, you can listen to us on our mobile app. You can join us via Skype, Nigeria Info FM, if you're calling from outside of the country. But in the studio, you can call 0201-465-7190. That's 0201-465-7190. Before we begin to take the calls, I did say I was going to ask you, what's the level of acceptability in the rural areas when you talk about renewable energy? Because this is not something that those in those areas understand, maybe for the guys who run like the farmlands who have access to that information, but what's the acceptability level?
Currently, in all the rural areas, not only even in the rural areas now, day in, day out, even the peri-urban areas, there's continuous demand for our intervention, day in, day out, for us to do that. And this is reason being nothing other than the advantages of renewable energy, the costs advantage, the scalability, the efficiency of deployment, and the reliability. So this is why continuously in all the rural areas, they are requiring this our intervention. We are overwhelmed by the demand from different communities. On daily basis, we receive requests from communities for our intervention. And what we are doing is currently deploying what we call the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, where we are mapping the entire country. So rather than an ad hoc cherry picking of communities, we are using geospatial mapping to map the entire country, getting socio-economic indicators of all the communities. So using the map, we identify where are the so-called unelectrified communities, where are the underserved, where are the electrified communities, and even the unelectrified communities, what is the number of households, what is the total number of people within that, what is the nature of their occupation, the nature of their business, what is the load demand of that community, what is even projected 5-year load demand. So we're getting all this data and want to use data to prioritize high impact. Which of the community can we deploy as 100 kilowatt to get the most effective impact? So that is what we are now doing to select the communities for our intervention.
Okay, we're live now on facebook.com/Nigeria Info FM. You can also watch us live on YouTube, Nigeria Info FM. We're talking about the future of renewable energy and rural electrification in Nigeria. Abba Aliyu is the MD of REA, that's the Rural Electrification Agency here in Nigeria. Now we're talking, is that before you go into these areas, do you have town hall meetings, meet with the chiefs? Because, you know, it's a different ballgame when you get to those areas, especially for those communities who, I don't know any communities that speak English anyway. But, you know, how do you reach out to these people? I mean, it's not enough to say that, you know, this is what you're doing, but how do they understand it so that they can embrace it? Yes, some of them are embracing it because when you see light, you're happy. But what's the communication like?
So like I rightly said before, in all these communities, part of our sustainability framework is the community engagement. Part of our operational framework, there is community engagement, there is social intervention, there is environmental intervention. We look at all these facts. So we don't just go to community and just start deploying infrastructure. That would go against our sustainability framework. We do this, engage this community, have interaction with the community. Before we even deploy the infrastructure, we need to discuss the tariff. We need to understand where should the infrastructure be sited, how the operation of the infrastructure will be, sign and agree That is the basis upon which we now agree to work with the private sector for us to incentivize them to deploy that infrastructure in the communities. We don't just go there. And like I told you, in all the communities we go, we create even the electricity user association.
Yes, you did.
And we use that as part of getting ownership of that, getting the community to own that infrastructure. But beyond that, also to use it to train the youth within that community for them to be the first line of responding in the event of fault. So it's our even way of creating job opportunities within these
and empowering
communities and empowering them.
Lovely.
Exactly.
All right, Lagos, the phone lines are open. 0201 277 0993 0201 465 7190. You could join the conversation. We're live on YouTube and on Facebook. Ask your questions on our live feed. Hello. Welcome to Hard Fact.
Good evening, Maryann.
Good evening. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Robert. I am calling you from Apapa. Good evening, sir. I greet you. My question, you said you are going to tie your power source to the national grid. What will be the difference between what you want to supply and what we are experiencing now? As we speak now, the grid has just collapsed, partially collapsed, so, which means if that grid collapses, if you are tying it to that place, the people you are rendering that service to will also experience a power failure. So I'm not seeing any positive thing that you are talking to us here. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good question. But you are getting it a bit wrong. Because our generation, our source of generation is different from that of the grid. Mm-hmm. The grid source of generation is the one that we get from the thermal power plant, the hydro power plant, which goes through the national grid. But what we are saying is we have our own source of generation, which is decentralized from the grid network. In fact, what we are looking at in the future is as we start to deploy large-scale, utility-scale solar project infrastructure, in the event of any disruption on the national grid, we will use our own plant, which is independent of the generation plant that are connected to the grid, to send our electrons to the grid to help empowering the national grid. So to answer his question, no, we would, in fact, in connecting with the grid will help in strengthening the grid, because our generation plant, it's not part of the generation plant connected to the grid. Ours is distributed different from the one connected to the grid, and we are using our own to only inject to the grid in the event where that's required.
Okay. So someone here is sending us a message from Enugu, and he says, good evening to the guest in the studio. The topic is very interesting. Most rural communities in Nkano East local government of Enugu State have not been electrified. The areas include Amuzam, Agu, Iduma, Ani, I hope I pronounce it right, Ogowo, Amagunze, and others. And obviously he's asking, are you coming in our direction?
Yeah. Also a very good question. And like I told you, we have in the process of mapping the entire country now, and luckily enough, Enugu State is one of the states that we already have entirely mapped. We are in the process of engaging with the governor to have what we call the state-by-state roundtable. We are engaging each state governor. Bring the governor, the leadership of the state, bring the private sector that have an investment of over 2 billion and REA on the side. So discuss, show this mapping. All these areas he mentioned, if we checked our database, we will see them. We would even go to the extent of telling him the communities, how many households, what is the total number of people within these communities. So we showed the private sector, and the government would now say that, okay, this private sector come to Enugu to electrify. These are incentives that we will provide to the private sector. Well, we will now provide the capital grant to the private sector for them to deploy. What I want to assure Nigeria is that Mr. President has a very ambitious plan to address this electricity gap within the country. Like I told you, we are targeting in just one program to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians. And definitely most of these areas in Enugu State will be part of this plan.
Before I go back to the phone lines, more messages. Someone here says, thanks to Mr. Aliyu, so far, how many communities in Nigeria have been deployed with this intervention infrastructure? Also, why are we not enhancing solar energy, especially in the north where we have more than enough sun?
Yeah, so we have deployed over 200 mini grids across the country. There's no single state that you will go without any REA project. And the second line of his question, all these mini grids are solar based. So we are harnessing the solar project. And apart from this 200 mini grid that I've mentioned, we have impacted over 8 million Nigerians under just one program that we call the Nigerian Electrification Project. This mini grid is impacting on them, and we are also intervening in critical sectors of the Nigerian economy. We are intervening in education, health, and agriculture.
Great. Mrs. Okay, Kunle Bamboye from Alakbere here says, good evening. 4 local governments in the southern senatorial district of Ondo were without power supply for more than 10 years. Power was restored last year, but cables connecting streets and homes are in bad state. People can't connect to their houses in most places. How can REA help to resolve this challenge, he says?
In a situation whereby those communities he's referring to are within the Disco franchise, that's not your concern. That's not our area, unless if we're to sign that tripartite agreement for interconnected mini grid. So I have to know the dynamics of those areas to know if they are the areas that we can intervene. But at the same time, through the capital project, we do grid extension. But in this regard, we extend the grid to communities that are very close to where the grid stops, for them to have connection with the national grid.
Okay, let's move on to other questions. There's so many of them. Someone here says, can you come to Badagry? Someone is asking.
Absolutely.
Another person says, we're under, the person that was talking about says we're under Bini Electricity Distribution Company. So obviously they're not under the REAs. Let's go back to the phone lines. We're still taking your questions and your comments. Hello, welcome to Hard Facts.
Yeah, good evening, Maryann. Good evening to our guest.
Good evening.
Sir, please beam your satellite to Ndokwa Eastern Delta State. We have the biggest gas plant in West Africa. We don't have light. Please, can you do that for me?
Thank you very, very much. Like I said, it's the main joy or the main reason of REA's existence to see that all these communities are powered, are electrified. But like I clearly said, we have a mandate, and our mandate is to power unserved and underserved. If your community falls within this community, definitely we will come to that community, I assure you. But if it is not within, I'm very sure the other intervention that Honorable Minister of Power is undertaking to strengthen the grid, strengthen the transmission, and ensure the performance improvement plan of the distribution company will also enhance the quality of service in those areas.
Okay. We're still taking your thoughts and comments. Someone sends me a message here. I'm still trying to decode your message. 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. That's 0201-465-7190. We're still talking about rural electrification, and we're talking about the rural areas. Now, for those of you who are under discos, this conversation is not for you. It's for those who do not have access to power, especially the very rural areas, and that's the mandate of the REA. They are not TCN, they are not co-distribution, they are not Ikeja. They're talking about the rural areas that have no access to power, and those are the questions that we're taking this evening. Abba Aliyu is the MD of REA, and he's joined us live in the studio. Keep those questions coming. Someone here says, oh my goodness, that message has disappeared on our Facebook. I'll try to get it back. All right, but keep the calls coming. 0201-465-7190. We are also live on YouTube and Facebook. If you're listening to us from outside of the country, you can call us via Skype. We're Nigeria Info FM, or better still, you can send me a WhatsApp message 08095975-805. What's the timeline because you've said that at least 40 million people need access to power in the rural areas. Now, you have obviously gotten some percentage, mapped out in lots of areas, and you have started in some places. What is the timeline you're giving yourself as the REA to complete some of these projects in the areas that you've already started?
Our target is to electrify 25 million Nigerians in 30 years. That is the clear timeline. The program to electrify 17.5 million is a 5-year target, but we shorten it. We are very aggressive in our drive to electrify. For example, now on the 17th, we will start with the commissioning of about 13 interconnected mini grids. Well, like I said, even a number of them here in Lagos, in Plateau State, in Niger State. So, and we have a number of about 20 mini grids under the distributed access through renewable energy scale-up project that we are about to commission. So we are working day in, day out, targeting 25 million in 30 years.
Now, a lot of people don't understand that you do have a mandate to go to all communities. Someone's asking on the live stream that how can you be invited to our community?
So we, like I said, we are now using data rather than cherry picking, so that there is no political decision. Whatever decision we are taking to go to any community is based on facts, is based on numbers, is based on impact. So we are now relying on data to select these communities, most high impact communities, taking into account also geographical spread of the country. So that is what we are doing. But definitely the person's community will be one of the communities that will go to.
You've got a critic, Femi here from Ikorodu says, on the electrification projects, he says it's in Pidgin, so I'm going to read this in Pidgin. Now, on top radio and television, they electrify Nigeria. We don't hear this story from days of Obasanjo's government. Nothing has changed. In 26 years of democracy, with all the waste and stealing, many African countries have solved this problem, but he says we're not serious. What would you say to Femi here?
Well, I can understand Femi's concerns, but if, for example, he tells me where he's from, I would tell him a project within the state from a Ikorodu. So I would tell him a number of projects, for example, that are within Lagos State. The one, if he can also track the news in the next 2-3 weeks, we are commissioning a 1 megawatt interconnected mini grid that is within the Ikeja franchise area that I mentioned. For example, he can also drive, for example, to University of Calabar. He will see a 7 megawatt power plant that is there. If he can fly to Maiduguri, he can see 12 megawatts there. Or he can shorten his trip to, for example, Abuja and go to University of Abuja. He can see a 3 megawatt power plant powering the university, the teaching hospital, the university, the teaching theaters, and even the staff quarters. He can even round around Kwali within Abuja. There's 2 communities called Kilankwa, Peti, where he can see 100 kilowatts powering more than 6,000 communities. Or he can check a community that has been in existence in Abuja for 100 years, but we just commissioned a 50 kilowatts in isolated mini grid that is powering the community. The community is called Kurmenzurmi Rapin Zurmi. That's the name of the community. I can give him on and on and on of these communities. And if he's even following the news, on the starting from the 17th, we are starting a series of commissioning interconnected mini grids. 2 of them in just Plateau State. He will see that live and see the impact of those project. Or he can go to Kano, for example, and see the first 1 megawatt interconnected mini grid in Zawachiki done by one of our developers called Bagaja. I can give him list of this project. Okay.
Jeremiah here says, please ask your guest why Nigeria has the biggest hydropower dam at Mambila Plateau in Taraba State. Yet, Nigerians are under darkness. The politicians are using this issue of power like they do with the electoral reforms to play politics and to punish Nigerians. Why all the time talk, but no practical work on the ground that can be pointed to? Why are you people like this, he says. Do you know that there is actually God? Jeremiah from mainland, they're asking a question.
Thank you, Jeremiah. A lot of Nigerians are really frustrated with the issue of electricity, but the challenge of electricity in the country, it's something that quite can be dated back for a very long period of time. One of the reasons is that if you look at the population growth rate and the electrification growth rate are not going pari passu. They are going on different level. Population growing at about 5%, electrification at 1.1%. Secondly, there has been a very long time where the entire electricity value chain is in the hand of the government, and the government alone cannot provide a electricity infrastructure. And that is why if you go to most of the electricity infrastructure, you see they are dated, some of them even before the independence. So there has to be a deliberate effort to change almost all the entire infrastructure to enhance the quality and reliability. And that is why the government now, in its wisdom, opened the sector, not more anymore the government working on it, but allowing the private sector to bring in their funding to continue to do that. And it is through that the first greenfield independent power plant, Azura, came into being, a 450 megawatt in Edo that is powering it. Through those intervention, new generation keeps coming, and that is why we in the off-grid sector, we are now working with the private sector deploying these mini grids. We are currently a little above 200 mini grids, but our target in the next 3 years is to do a total of 1,350 mini grids.
Okay, because I have just a minute and I want to make very good use of it. What's the level of continuity? Because that's another concern. You might not be there tomorrow. In another 4 years, there's somebody else. What's the guarantee for continuity?
Well, I am very confident that
the agency should be in a way that she can continue with or without. Yeah.
And that is why even within the RES infrastructure, we are strengthening the system. We are developing a new business plan to ensure that we have system and structures competent, adequate enough to run a $2 billion government agency. That is one. And secondly, is most of this program are around the private sector to help strengthen the continuity you mentioned.
Well, we'll be keeping our eyes on you and the REA and following all the things that you're doing. I want to thank you once again, Mr. Abba Aliyu, for being here in the studio. He is the Managing Director for Rural Electrification Agency. Thank you once again for being in the studio. Now, of course, we will keep our eyes on you. Thank you. Well, Lagos, that's the show. We've got to go. On the other side of the clock, Yvonne will be here at the top of the hour with the news. Don't forget, follow Nigeria Info on all of its social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, TikTok. Here, and you can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, MIMIEYO with 2 flags. My name is Maryann Okon. I love you, Lagos. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.